Hey everybody, welcome to the 11th house. This is Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you live from Fredericksburg, Texas. What's going on? What's happening? I'm watching myself scratch my head. That's always really fun. And I can't really hear myself. Let me just try this here. Yeah, I don't like hearing myself all that much. Let me go over to Facebook and tell people on Facebook that we're here and hanging out. Let's do that. Complete the circle of life, as they say, right? Let's just move on over there. Let's see what we got. Da, 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 da. Da, da, da. Okay. Astrology, Mr. Robert Phoenix, that's me. I joined it. I didn't start it, but I joined it. Okay. Whoa. Holy smokes. Rico Kasich found dead. Wow. That is a big deal. Susan Guerrero must be totally freaked out. I'm looking rather, what do I look like today? I'm not crazy about my look today. I'm a little vain. That's the way it goes. Maybe I should put my baseball cap on. Let's see what we got here. Same people who are on Facebook, man. Okay. So let's see. Looks like Rico Kasich is dead. Eddie Money died on Saturday. What? Wow. Yeah, Rico Kasich from the Cars. I just saw the text, the link over on Facebook. Give me 1 second. I'm not crazy about my position. Hold on. Let me reposition myself. All right. I think that's better. That's better. Hey, what's going on, Anna? There's Michael, Maurice, Maury, Amy, Joan. Hey, Joni. Nice to see you. Rob, there's Rob. These are his peoples. Let's see what else. Sounds good on your end. Good. Excellent. The purple one is in the house. Shari. No, Eddie Money and Rico Kasich. He's married to Paulina Portsakova, right? God, my hair looks weird tonight. I'm sorry. I do have a streak of vanity still left inside of me. So I've been wearing a baseball cap all day. That's why. Okay, where's Jasper? Jasper is hanging out on his second favorite spot. Paulina left him. Oh, somebody asked where Jasper was, and guess what? Ask and ye shall receive. Come on, let's go. Here he is. The Astro cat coming in for a landing. Jasper, what do you got to say? Jasper ate some chicken bones today. Big day for Jasper. Say hello to your fan base out there. It's Catterday. What's going on? Masaki. Hey, Marlene. All right, welcome to chat. Marlene's gonna get in here for the first time tonight. There's Jan. Can't have a show without Jasper? Apparently not. I think my hair looks fine. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see, what else? Just kind of letting things kind of percolate. Man, the Rico Kasich thing is weird. So Paulina Portsakova left him. Is that right? Do you think that the two were tied together? Do you think that, hey, Julie, do you think that, what's going on, Derek? Did you get cracked Kraken? You mean kratom? Did I get kratom? That's only between me and my herbalist, also known as Jasper. Got a smiley cat there. So do you think it's connected? Do you think that here, let me find out. Let's look at this. This is kind of a breaking real-time thing. Let's find out. Because it seems, I didn't know she left him. Man, Susan's going to be freaked out. Found dead. He was 75. Can you believe that? Rick Ocasek was 75 years old. Well, one says 70. Somebody else says 75. Let's see. There's no... Well, Twitter doesn't waste any time. You know, Wikipedia doesn't waste any time, do they? They just get right to it. Obituary ready to go. I'm not seeing any cause of death. A lot of remembrances. Wow. So let's see. The question is, are they still married? Let's see. Well, it says they were still married. I don't know. Are they still married? Still married. No. So apparently they have two sons too as well. Ocasek was born in 1943. Holy smokes, 1943 or 44. There's no, so they don't have any. Well, he was a really early baby boomer. I had no idea Rick Ocasek was that old. I had no idea. But now it's got him here as 49. What's the deal with that? 1949 or 1943, 1944, 1949. So that's why there's a discrepancy in the age stuff. That's very weird. Very, very weird. He was an Aries, born March 23rd, first day of the zodiacal New Year. Wow. Well, I guess maybe she left him. He leaves a bunch of kids. Oliver Orion Ocasek, Jonathan Raven Ocasek, Christopher Otkasek, I think he changed his name, Iran Otkasek, and Derek Otsesek. That's really strange. So he's got kids that have derivations on his name. We've got two Ocaseks, one Otkasek, and then another Otsasek. Very strange. Anyway, Rick Ocasek has left the party. He has left the party. And a lot of people were really into the cars. I liked some of their stuff. That means that's two members of the Cars who've now passed away. Of course, Benjamin Orr, the singer and bass player, also. They were interesting, you know. They were kind of that electronic, poppy, little punky new wave sound. And Ocasek kind of gave them sort of an interesting, gaunt. I wouldn't call him a goth, but he had that kind of vibe, you know. He had that kind of gothy vibe in some ways. Maybe because he looked like he was a wraith and extremely close to death. You know, today I was out today, and so every now and then I treat myself, but it's a Virgo thing. So I rode my bike today to the donut shop, and I got a donut, and I had a cup of coffee. And I like to watch people at the donut shop and how many donuts they eat. they order. It's amazing how many donuts people order. I got one. And it's such a fucking Virgo donut, man. It's an old fashioned. So, you know, you think I'd get some chocolate or I don't know. It's not that big a deal. Anyway, so there's this guy standing there, and he is with his wife, yes, and she's doing all the ordering. And let's put it this way: she didn't look like she missed too many donut Sundays. Okay, and he was maybe a little more svelte, but wasn't that far behind her. Boy, they were ordering away, and they were deep into their donuts. Anyway, he was wearing shorts, and he was kind of a normal looking kind of geeky guy. And then I looked down by his ankle, and he had a tattoo, the Grim Reaper, down by his ankle. Why would you want to do that? First of all, why would you want the Grim Reaper as a tattoo? I mean, I guess maybe it's a Pluto and Scorpio thing. I'm assuming he was a Pluto and Scorpio kind of guy. Are you making friends with the Grim Reaper? Is that way of you confronting the fear of death? Maybe that's kind of where it was, how it was. It was right around the ankle. So what is that? That's Aquarian territory with the Grim Reaper around the ankle. It's very unusual. Then I thought, then I have this little script that goes into my head. I go, oh wow. I wonder if they're pagans. I wonder if that's their thing, their secret thing. They're pagans. I DJ'd at a pagan wedding one time. It was very unusual, very strange. I noticed how a lot of the pagan people tended to be on the plumpy side, but they did not miss many meals either. I'm not saying that all pagans are plump, but my experience at that wedding, DJing the pagan wedding, was that they were all kind of plumpy. Not really fat, but just kind of plumpy. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Maybe they were pagans. It was an unusual tattoo on the ankle, the Grim Reaper on the ankle. Very odd. It was kind of stylized. It wasn't actually a bad looking tattoo. And then right after that, this other couple comes in, and they order up Donut City, and a very, very different couple. They sit down, and they do the prayers. They pray before their donuts. The dude was he was a big guy. He was another big fella. He was wearing all pink. He was wearing some kind of a Nike shirt. It was all pink. And then I remembered it's a breast cancer awareness month. So we're getting close to it. So maybe he's just getting the jump on it. So two contrasting donut diners. The young pagans, the young plump pagans, and then the, let's call them the comfy Christians. That's what they were. Donut Express. All right, what are you doing? Are you going to hang out here, or what's your story, Morning Glory? All right, just relax. Relax. Virtue Signal Awareness Month. There it is. Maybe he has a strong Saturn in his chart. Could be. Could be. Rick would be classified as pre-goth. He was very goth. He had that vibe, He had that vibe. Very gaunt, yes. Found dead in Manhattan apartment. Goth is land of giants, where Goliath is from. Well, Rick Ocasek was about 6'5", so maybe he was. What's going on, Rod? Nice to see you. So maybe he was a goth, descended from the land of giants. All right, so I guess we should get into the chart of the moment. Seems like the forces have assembled. I've got a new Twitter account up and running, in case you're interested in that. You know what I did? I went through and I looked at a bunch of people that I follow and who follow me or who don't follow me, and I whacked about 700 people last night on Twitter. It was great. It was great. It was kind of like there was something gratifying about cutting the dead wood. It's like, you follow me, I follow you. You follow me, I follow you. Very Libran kind of thing. So that was good. And I've got a kind of a new emphasis and a focus on Twitter. And I'm working on a new website. Not that the old website is going away. I still do stuff for the old website. Just the new website is under construction. And having a bit of a different focus and emphasis on the website. All right, so why don't we get into the chart of the moment, and let me bring that onto the loading dock, and we can talk about that. Uno momentito. Let's see. All right. How's everybody's weekend going, by the way? You guys having a good weekend? It's been, I think the weather's changing a bit here. And for all you people who are coming out in October, that's not a bad thing. You'll enjoy it. You'll definitely enjoy the nice, cool, warm, breezy. It's September 11th. It's just a really nice. It's a nice change because we've been dialed up into the high 90s for the last 6 weeks. That happens here. It gets incredibly hot. You know, while I'm looking for this for the chart of the moment. Let's see what else. Well, I'm looking for the chart of the moment here, which is what I've been playing around with. I had a really interesting experience on Friday. Let me just go into the program. I had a really interesting experience on Friday. I was going through Kerrville, and I saw this business, and it was crazy. It was a crazy business. It said laptops and guns, CBD oil, and kratom. I'm like, I got to stop in here. I got to see what this place is about. So I went in there, and it was a really interesting experience because there was a guy who owned the place. He was a young guy, 19 years old, and it's his thing. He fixes computers. He knows guns, and Kerrville is the recovery and rehab, one of the recovery rehab centers of the United States. So it's kind of a big deal for people to go there and dry out. And a lot of people that dry out stay there. That's what happens. So having stuff like CBD and kratom is actually kind of a good thing for that business in that part of the world. I'll share more of this as the night goes on. Let's get into the chart of the moment. Very interesting kid, 19 years old. Gives me a little bit of hope for the future. And I'll tell you a story about this kid. And when I tell you the story, it'll blow your mind. It'll blow your mind. 19, just keep in mind now he's going to be Generation Z. And this is going to give you some insight into that generation. Okay, here we go. Chart of the moment. Teeing it up. We got Chiron Moon conjunction. The ascendant is 3 Aries. It's funny, when I pulled this off I pulled the first version off the Astro.com site, we were at Pisces. We were at like late degrees Pisces. I kind of like Aries on the ascendant now. Boy, we're going to get into that T-square again, and that's definitely going to come up when we talk about, or when we get into the charts for what happened in Saudi Arabia and how it's going to potentially impact us, the world stage, the whole 9 yards. There's a lot going on here. There's kind of a lot to unpack, and I'll try to bring in some of the geopolitical stuff so you get some backstory, some context as to why I think things are happening now, other than the astrological timing of the event. So yeah, we still have this T-square going on, and we had Mars. So this is interesting now. Mars is at 18 degrees. So what happened when this whole thing went kaboom? Right, Mars was in opposition with Neptune. We talked about that. We kept mentioning that this Mars-Neptune opposition was going to be significant. And sure as hell it was. Now we're having to deal with oil potentially going up to $100 a barrel. And if you don't think that's going to have an impact on your groceries when it comes to the marketplace, you may want to think about it. We're also going to be dealing with some very difficult output from our farmers, because in the Midwest, they had a deluge in the early spring, and hundreds and thousands, if not millions of acres were submerged all across the Midwest. Crops were lost, cattle was lost. It was a big deal. And harvest time is usually the time where, you know, that math equation, you know, gets solved or not. Right? That's where we get to see, you know, kind of what they were able to do, what they were able to grow, and how they were able to grow. Not only that, but they've been in a trade war. You know, we've been in a trade war with China, and China's, you know, not buying the soybeans, and they're going to South America, Argentina specifically, for other foods and other staples. So the trade wars have hurt the farmers of America, and it could potentially have an impact on our shelving, what shows up, how much it is as well. Now we're going to have quite possibly oil that will reach $100 a barrel. Now, the Saudis have said that they're going to be up and running, and that Aramco plant that was hit by the drones will be able to process, refine, and then distribute oil again. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. A lot of the oil that actually comes from Saudi Arabia actually will wind up on tankers, and those barges will cross the Atlantic, and they will come into the United States, particularly here in the South, in places like Texas and Louisiana and Alabama, where, you know, they'll come in and then the refining process starts. So it's not as if that's going to have a huge impact, because they can still get crude out of there. We get crude from, but what happens in the marketplace is a big deal. It is the perceived impact in the marketplace. We're going to see what happens Monday when the market's open. Well, let's get back in here. So we had that Mars-Neptune opposition a couple days ago. We'll go into more detail with that, but we're still in the throes of this mutable T-square, and things feel pretty unstable in a lot of ways. I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me in the last few days, just wanting to have either somebody to talk to, looking for answers, trying to have something clarified in their lives. I mean, I usually get emails like that every now and then, but the number of emails and the number of kind of personal requests of people just, you know, kind of getting lost in the fog right now has been fairly significant. So we also have the Schumann stuff that's, you know, starting to go all flutter and wow. We're moving into the solar minimum with there's no sunspot activity. So things are really unusual in a lot of ways. I mean, just from sort of the perspective of the Schumann frequency, of the solar minimum, and we've got this kind of radical T-square. I think people are having a hard time staying in their bodies. People are having a difficult time staying in their skin. And I don't think that this is a reality that's going to resolve itself or abate itself anytime soon. That doesn't mean that you put a gun to your head and you know, take the dirt nap. That's not what I'm advocating at all. I mean, here we are. We're in these times. These are very, very important times, and there's a lot of information that's available to us to kind of move through these times. We're here to bear witness to one of the greatest changes on the history of this planet, for better or worse. And I'm hoping that enough of us hold the space and it becomes better. That's what I'm hoping. You know, when we see somebody like Mike Pompeo run around and start pointing fingers at Iran and doing everything that the puppet masters are telling him to do, when we see Lindsey Graham start to spout out about, oh, well, of course, you know, this is, the Iranians, and we need to go to war. Lindsey Graham is deeply, deeply in the pockets of Israel, likely because he's being blackmailed. That's my thoughts around Lindsey Graham. He's probably being blackmailed. I bet they've got. He's not a very tall guy. I think he's about 5'3" or 5'4", maybe 5'5" if he's lucky. And I think they've got a pile of bullshit that probably is about as high as his third eye. So I think he's deeply compromised. Plus, he also does very, very well, I'm sure, no doubt, in his little world down there, in his little domain in the South. But of course, on cue, he's banging the war drum. So here we go. But Mike Pompeo, the guy, I can't. He's one of the least. Look, I don't know. Maybe the guy is great behind closed doors. Maybe he speaks 6 languages. Maybe he's got a connection to Draco Command or something. I don't know. Draco High. The guy wants to be president. Apparently, he just does. He's not. He doesn't strike me as being very impressive. It's like he's just like another one of these guys that just reads the script. Just reading scripts. The one thing about Trump that is interesting and may drive people nuts, but he doesn't read a script, and he's actually funny in a lot of cases. But now even Trump is starting to kind of bang the war drum. I saw a tweet that he put out earlier tonight. We're locked and loaded. We're locked and loaded, and we're just awaiting orders. Well, who are you waiting the orders from? Molech, Baal. Again, what will Trump do? Will he throw up a crappy Scud missile like he did when they went after the plant in Syria? The whole thing is very interesting, and the Houthis factor into this. So we'll get into more of this, but this is part of that Mars Neptune opposition. Boom, there it was. Astrology in action. And of course, we're having a difficult time trying to ascertain and figure out what the fuck is going on. I mean, on some level, we know, right? Like on some level, pretty clear that probably there's a country in the Middle East that would really love to take Iran out and take a lot of its resources, but probably could make a case that they're pretty close to this event. But again, we have to go through and sort things out. Is it the Houthis? We'll get into that more. But this is a crazy time. This mutable T-square, and Jupiter is it's still there, right? It's just hanging out. It's almost exact. It's almost exactly square Neptune, and it'll be great when Jupiter finally lurches forward and begins to separate and move away from Neptune, and then it'll be closing. We'll be closing that story finally. But what happens between now and then? How much more bullshit will we have to, scrape off of our windshields with our squeegees, our bullshit squeegees? I think a lot. There's potential for a lot. Especially now that we have Mars in play. Now, Mars is starting to separate as well and move away. We do have Venus and Mercury in Libra, thank God. Maybe the potential for a little bit of diplomacy, although there's no such thing as diplomacy anymore. There's no such thing as diplomacy. Diplomacy is, maybe diplomacy. When was the last time somebody was actually diplomatic? Was it Jimmy Carter in the Camp David Accord with... what's the guy from Egypt, Nasser, right? And then Begum, Menachem Begum, 3 of them. I think it was the last time we might have had some real diplomacy, or maybe it was Trump trying to get Rocky ASAP out of Sweden. Was that diplomacy? Is Rocky ASAP out of Sweden, by the way? Did he free Rocky? You know who wanted him out. That was a Kim Kardashian deal. Kim picked up the phone and said, DJT, can you get Rocky out? He doesn't deserve it. Rocky doesn't deserve it. He was framed. Then Trump boy, much to his credit, I think he brought him home. Trump has also addressed the homeless issue in California. Maybe I'll talk more about that later this week. About time. But here we are. We're in the T-square, and I think we're going to still have some rough sledding until a lot of these Virgo planets kind of move away, separate from Jupiter and Neptune. When they get into Libra, it might be a bit more harmonious, although, then we'll wind up getting into the square with Saturn and Pluto. So this is going to be a really critical time, and I think this fall could be this fall could be hot, because when we get into that T-square with all those Libra planets potentially with Saturn and Pluto, what does it feel like? When I feel into that, it feels like it feels really rule oriented. It feels really like almost like there is a sacrifice for the rule of law, because Libra represents adjudication, like the scales of justice, and going in and squaring Saturn with that Pluto square as well, and we could throw the South Node in there too. To me, that's almost like there's like a sacrifice involved, because of Pluto. Like the square to Saturn is, things like, I think this is connected to be quite honest with you, I think this is connected to like guns, gun control, hate speech, hate crimes. This is kind of where we're going. And I think we're going to have some action coming up here. And I would not be surprised if there's another event that happens between now and whenever the next clown show called the Democratic debate is. I would not be surprised if we see something happen, and maybe that thing that happens really, tips the scale in some ways. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think that, to me, we get into Pluto, we get into sacrifice. That's what Pluto represents. When you get into Pluto squares, you sacrifice something. You have to those are very intense squares. I think the most intense Pluto squares happen to be like the Moon and Venus Pluto squares, especially the Moon, because there's so much compulsion involved with a Moon Pluto square. If you haven't gone through a Moon Pluto, everybody's gone through a Moon Pluto square, right? Like Pluto squaring your Moon in your chart. If you haven't gone through that, you're not living. I'm telling you. You're not living, because it gets very intense. It's very, very intense. You go into the underworld, face your fears, face your fears about abandonment, face your fears about possession, jealousy, all that shit. Right? There's a lot that goes on with that. It's a very challenging square. So if you have, let's say, a Moon in Libra or Moon in Aries. In fact, we got a Moon in Aries coming up here tomorrow. It's going to square Pluto. To me, the Moon is kind of one of those minor transits, but you have to look at where we are geopolitically with the Moon Pluto square. That's like temper. That's temper. People are losing their temper. Corks are blowing, fuses are blowing, radiators are overheating. People are slamming their fists, demanding action. Does that sound familiar to you? Yeah, I think it's going to get kind of heavy in the next 24 hours, only because of what's taken place since Friday night, Saturday morning. So, yeah, I'm not optimistic about these squares coming up in Libra, only because I'd like to say, oh well, fair, just, and honest. Yes, but squaring Saturn, squaring Pluto, squaring the South Node, to me, it represents sacrifice. That there's something that we'll have to sacrifice somewhere in the not so distant future, or at least we'll begin to have the conversation around that. Trump is calling for negative interest rates. The economy is not great. What happened to all the talk? Remember when he got elected? Oh, this air conditioning plant is going to stay in Indianapolis. They're not going to Mexico. Oh, Ford's going to build this car here. Oh, this Japanese company is going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars. Was it SoFi? Isn't that the company, SoFi? Well, they've got a stadium. They're going to, I think it's SoFi. I think so. They've got a stadium, and they got the naming rights to the Rams and the Chargers stadium. So technically, they are investing money in the economy. But there's not a lot of talk of that now. And I'm not doing it to bag on Trump, but it's like, here's the deal. Here's how I feel about it. Politicians. Okay, let me reference this. Let me just reference this for a minute. I was on Twitter, and there's another astrologer, and the initials are JC, and she lives in Washington, D.C. To her credit, she follows me, and we're very, very different. She's clearly a dyed-in-the-wool liberal, and the big deal now is to go after Brett Kavanaugh, because that's another thing that they're going to do. Apparently, Brett Kavanaugh's got some discrepancies. A book came out. New York Times published this book, and New York Times has been going after Trump and anybody and anything related to Trump from the moment that Trump set foot in office. They run ads. The New York Times run ads where they want to discredit Trump. They're discrediting him. Whatever. I mean, there may be vital information, or some of the information may be true, or there may be some of it may have some traction. But it's the New York fucking Times, right? I mean, this is the newspaper that basically got us into the war with Iraq. They're the ones that promoted it, Judith Miller. And we're supposed to take them seriously. We're supposed to listen to them. So, oh, aren't you the people that got us into that war in Iraq? And look how fucked up that was. And now we're supposed to believe you on this. Anyway, they've got a book they just published. It's about some guy just hitting the stands, Brett Kavanaugh. It's all about how he was apparently in debt, and there was a thing with baseball tickets, and I think the Orioles and the selling of the tickets. I don't know the complete story, and it got him out of debt. Okay. And that's, okay. So I'm not a huge Brett Kavanaugh fan. They went after him for all the wrong reasons. They went after him for, his high school hanky-panky drunken escapades with all those other privileged little snots in Washington, D.C. that were running around and getting drunk and stumbling into a future that was almost preordained for them because of their connections and their family ties. That's not the reason. They should have gone after him for other stuff, like his stance on privacy and the First Amendment, and his relationship with the Bushes, and his relationship with the Clintons, and his relationship with Vince Foster and that whole scene, the Rose Law Firm, because he was on the other side of the fence during that time. None of that stuff ever came up. They never, ever really address the stuff that's got the real meat on the bones. Instead, they go after this, tiny little gristly part. They go after the tail. They chase the tail. They don't, and again, right, they're going after Trump. This is the JC. They're going hard after Kavanaugh. Let's get him, right? Let's get him because he lied. He lied about the baseball tickets and how he got his money. Are you fucking kidding me? If you're looking for a technicality to get somebody, I guess, you got to hang your hat on something. But to me, that is just totally banal. And I guess maybe there's other things in the book about, what he did at school and the drunken, whatever. It was in high school. I wouldn't have named him to the Supreme Court. I'm not even sure that was Trump's nomination. He was probably told what to do. But this is the best they've got. And I'm sitting there thinking, really? You're pounding your keyboard because you want this. What about Jeffrey Epstein? What about, all the gals with Jeffrey Epstein, the connections with the Clintons, connections with MIT, all this other stuff, In-Q-Tel? Where are you with that? It's like they just completely gloss over it. Oh, Brett Kavanaugh. he made money with baseball tickets. Big fucking deal. Big deal. There are people on the Supreme Court. Is there anybody on the Supreme Court that really has a whole lot of integrity to begin with? And it's part of the T-square. Here we are, right? They're swatting around, this legion of bees trying to find something about Brett Kavanaugh because this new book came out, and then they can somehow use it to put it together and impeach Trump. I tell you, if Trump gets reelected, if this goes on, and I'll show you, I'll bring it up. I'll show you the chart for election night. If this goes on with election night, and he's there, and he's crossing the finish line against, I don't know, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie, you'll see the chart for that night. It is gonna be ugly. It's gonna be ugly. Like, I think, like, if we go through this process and there is an election and Trump gets reelected, it could start the Civil War. I'm telling you right now. I am telling you right now. The chart for that night is bloody. All right, let's get back into this. We still have that Uranus. Oh, this is cool a little bit. I mean, Uranus is retrograding, but it's still, it's moving away from Saturn. Is Uranus retrograding? Let's check here. Yeah. So we do have a sextile. We do have the Saturn-Neptune sextile, and Saturn's going to get closer to Neptune. And I actually like that sextile. It's a good one because I've talked about this before. It allows us to be kind of spiritually goal-oriented, okay? And sometimes those things are antithetical, to be spiritual and to have a goal. Okay. Usually goals are material or performance-based, but I think this is one of them where it's actually really good to have quote unquote spiritual goals, whatever they are. Break a habit. Let's see, you have a better relationship with your body. Look at your thoughts, look at your feelings. Do your best to kind of make peace with these things. Petition the Lord for prayer. I mean, that's possible too, right? This could be good. So this has been going on for a while. We've been talking about this. It's been one of the kind of the saving graces. So while the backdrop of the Matrix, the kind of the cartoon show The Matrix keeps going on, there's some opportunity for real growth. And I hope some of you have been actually investing in that over the last few months. The true node is at 15, Cancer. I'm going to look at the true node a little bit later as it relates to Mr. Cam Newton, which I talked about on Friday's show. And I looked at it astrologically for him and it's like, ooh, wow, that's interesting. And I found out also that Cam Newton has become a vegan. And that explains everything. How could you be a vegan and play pro football? I think that'd be very difficult. You know, pro football is one of those sports that demands kind of this, animal instinct and in the intense proteins and this, whatever sulfur you can get. Especially if you get rare meat, you can get sulfur in rare meat. Sulfur is really important, by the way. And packs on muscle mass and stuff like that. If you stop doing that, then all of a sudden your body changes, your intention changes. I mean, I feel sorry for him. Somebody's giving him the wrong diet. Now, if you want to be a vegan and not play football, well, that's a whole other thing. And I don't know if you guys have seen these vegan videos on YouTube where people start off and they're really happy, super healthy. And then over time, their vegan lifestyle turns them into, I'm going to use the word again, like Rick Ocasek, wraiths. It turns them into these wraiths, and their hair falls out, and they got skin problems, and it's really kind of a heavy deal. And yet they are convinced that they're still happy and healthy and just loving life, and they go into these weird things where they're like just a bag of bones and they're flexing their muscles. It's like, that's just weird. So this is what happens, I think, not with everybody, but I think some people are not meant for the vegan diet, and I'm thinking Cam Newton isn't. So when you wake up tomorrow, that moon is going to be in Aries. So just remember that. Just remember that. And it's going to be moving closer into square with Pluto. Might be separating a bit by tomorrow. It'll still be in square. Whenever I do this, whenever I talk about this on Sunday nights, I usually have stuff come up for me, which is interesting. So I'm like thinking, okay, what do I have to do? What do I have to do? Cooler heads prevail. Let cooler heads prevail. Opt into the Moon-Jupiter trine instead of the Moon-Pluto square. The Moon-Jupiter trine is a little more benevolent, a little more kind, and a lot more expansive, shall we say. All right, that's the chart of the moment. Let me stop and check in with you people. Chatlandia over in the chat room. Let's see what's going on. Find you. Let's see, that is the Post Gazette. Today was a crazy day in pro football, man. Crazy day. The NFL's just kind of a crazy season. It is going to be very, very, very unusual. Oddly unusual. All right, there you go. There's everybody. Let's see, what do we got? Okay, let's see. Chris and Steve, right? Hey, what's going on, Chris and Steve? Mahomes. Pat Mahomes is a badass. He's a Virgo. You know, interesting thing about Pat Mahomes. Here's an interesting little sync about it. Pat Mahomes plays for the. I really like Pat Mahomes. I think Pat Mahomes is kind of next level as a person. I watched him play at Texas Tech. I didn't go there, but I live in Texas, so I watched him. And I'm like, man, my God, this guy's a talent. And today was really, really interesting. The Chiefs played at Oakland County Coliseum, Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, and his father never won a game there. His father was a major league pitcher. We're getting the latency. Father was a major league pitcher, and Pat Mahomes' father's last pitch at that stadium was on this day, right? It was on this day. The last time he ever pitched at the Oakland Coliseum was on this day, and it's the last time the Kansas City Chiefs will ever play at that stadium. Isn't that odd? That's a really odd synchronicity. I've got low system resources. Okay, I got to close some stuff. Give me a second. I'm having some issues with the computer. Give me one sec. We're gonna get this thing solved. Yeah, I was noticing that the signal was dropping off. The other thing too is that my provider is Spectrum, and you get this great speed. You get these downloads and uploads, and I've done speed tests on my system, and actually my speed is crap, to be honest with you. But they always tell you, oh my God, great speed. You got great speed there. Give me 1 second. Let me just close a few of these things. And hopefully we'll get some performance. Close that. 1 second here. Yeah, got that closed. All right, let's see what we got now. This should be a little bit better. Looks like it's still struggling a bit. I'm going to go into the hardwire. Let me just get into the hardwire here. Hardwire to the system, because that could help. Give me 1 second. We were cooking there for a while. Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. Don't go away. Get up, have a drink, take a pee. Take me less than 2 minutes. Hold on. Okay, let's try this. This is hardwired directly. And I'm right next to the modem. It's not like I'm halfway across the planet here. That should go. That should be good. Okay, I think we solved this. Thanks for your patience. So we can have a nice flow, uninterrupted from here on out. Yeah, so the Pat Mahomes thing was really interesting. So his father, let me just say the story again. His father played baseball, played for the a lot of teams, Minnesota Twins, New York Mets, Texas Rangers, and he pitched in 2 games at that stadium, and he never won a game there. And Pat Mahomes' dad could bring it. He threw about 90, 92, 93 miles per hour. Anyway, the very last game that he ever pitched at that stadium was on this day, okay? And his son plays in that stadium, and it's the last game the Kansas City Chiefs will ever play at that stadium. So it's weird, right? It's like this weird synastry between him and his father, and Pat's birthday is tomorrow. So he's just a next level kid, man. I mean, when I saw him play football at Texas Tech, I knew he was going to be a star. And you know, when he's interviewed and they talk to him, he's just so incredibly humble. And you know, pro sports and pro football and athletes a lot of times get a really bad name. Pat Mahomes is he's just a next level kid. And you know, congratulations to him and his family, and they did a good job raising him. I mean, the kid was around. He was in an NFL, MLB clubhouses from the age of 4. I mean, he was basically born and raised to do what he's doing now. Anyway, let's get into some other stuff. Let's just jump right into the Saudi stuff, and we're going to look at a chart. So I'm going to bring that into the discussion here. Give me 1 second. So I get back to, yeah, Jasper. No, you're back in the mix, Jasper. You are. Just when we thought Jasper had given us his best performance of the evening, it didn't happen. No, relax. Take it easy. Take it easy. Take it easy, brother. Okay, so what do we have here? We've got, pull this up. Okay, let's try to find that. By the way, I did make an interesting pick today using astrology, of all things, about that. The pick that I made was I was looking at the sun. I was looking at the kickoff for the NFL, and I was looking at one game in particular, and that was the Seahawks and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the sun was on the midheaven, and it was Pete Carroll's birthday, and he's a Virgo, and he was going up against a Pisces, and the Pisces was Mike Tomlin. And I thought, okay, well, this is Pete Carroll's day. I think the Seahawks are going to win, and of course they did. It was a very strange game, and another Pisces, Ben Roethlisberger, wound up getting hurt. So it was an interesting kind of, they got caught in the T-square. It's very, very difficult right now for the mutable signs, I'd have to say. They're pretty difficult. Okay, so let me just go in here and grab the drone strike. And then here. And we're going to look at our good friends in the Middle East. Look at them. This is very telling. I actually posted this chart earlier today over on Facebook, so some of you have had a chance to eyeball this thing. But this is a mind blower in a lot of ways. This is where astrology can really like leave clues. I mean, we saw this with Epstein. We saw this with the Epstein chart, especially when I put it up against the Trump chart. It's like, okay, we know who was involved with that one. So this is where, again, we can get a real understanding of how these things fit together. Here we go. Push these in. Here we go. Away we go. I want to put it. Okay, here we go. All right, that's what I'm talking about. Do the screen share. There we go. This is the chart that we're going to be diving into here. It's kind of an important one, actually. Let me square it up a little bit. Okay. So this is the synastry chart, and it's kind of a big deal. So in the middle, you can see where back. Interesting relationship with technology. I'm not that challenged. All right, here we go. All right, back to it. Thanks for your patience. Appreciate it. Okay, so here's the chart. All right, on the inside, this is the actual time. So we're looking at 4 a.m. I used Riyadh. It wasn't in Riyadh, obviously, but it was pretty close. And here we have the actual drone strike itself. Okay, so we know a lot of these planets already. The usual suspects. Here we have Mars. Mars in Virgo. We have this was on the full moon, by the way, which is an unusual time to do a strike. You usually do strikes during a new moon, you know, the cover of darkness and all that stuff. But if we look at Mars, we have Mars at 17 Virgo, and then Neptune over here. What is this? Oh, I'm sorry. Mars is 17 Virgo, and then Neptune is 17 Virgo. Because the outer wheel, that's Israel. We'll get into that in a second. But I just wanted to show you the Mars-Neptune opposition. And then we have the Moon-Neptune conjunction. Full moon, and at that time it was in the 7th house of the chart for Saudi Arabia. And we have a very interesting in conjunct with Moon-Neptune coming over to Saturn-Pluto. And Moon-Neptune are at 19 and 17. And then Saturn is at 16, and then Pluto is at 12. So this is really kind of in conjuncting Saturn, right? And what's interesting here is that the outer planets, or the planets in the outer ring, this is all based on Israel's chart. And so what do we have here is we've got Moon, Pluto, and Saturn. And they have a Moon, Pluto, Saturn conjunction, stellium, in Leo, and it's in the 12th house here. So something is happening, right? They're connected to this event in a very deep and very hidden kind of way, okay? And now we have the in conjunct with Moon, Neptune, in conjuncting their Saturn. So there is a relationship between what's happening here and the influence that's hidden or occulted or included in what's happening over here, which seems to be, how do I say this? It seems to be articulated in some ways, like something happened. But because of where the Moon and Neptune are and what they're doing, or not doing in case of Israel's chart, it draws attention. That like this is the only relationship that's going on here. Now, of course, Moon, Neptune are part of the T-square that was taking place during that time. But there's a hidden relationship between Saturn, which happens to be authoritarian, and it happens to be very much connected in a very dark kind of way. That Saturn-Pluto conjunction in that chart is pretty intense. You know, this is what's interesting about a Saturn-Pluto conjunction, especially, and look, let's take it out of like the context of that country. In any country, a Saturn-Pluto conjunction like that, to me, is indicative of a country that would actually possibly die, right? Like if they had to, you know, they would set the whole thing on fire if they had to. I mean, that's the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. It's power, 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 power. But if they needed to, you know, there could be some kind of sacrifice in some ways. Now, they're going to have some issues. Israel's going to have some issues coming up when Saturn moves into Aquarius. It's not going to be for a while, but they're going to have a Saturn opposition, and transiting Saturn is going to oppose their Pluto. The Saturn transit through Aquarius is going to be one of the most difficult transits for Israel. It's going to be pretty challenging. It'll be pretty challenging transit. That's my take. The last time that was there was in the early 90s. But this is a different world now. It's a very, very different world. And then prior to that, you have to go back to the early 60s. And that was a very interesting time for Israel, the early 60s, because they were in formation, right? They hadn't had their 6-day war. They hadn't had the USS Liberty. They hadn't had a lot of stuff go on. And so that Saturn opposition, I think, was about sort of their process of ultimately grabbing and building. But I do think that the world is going to have a much greater impact on how they are viewed over the course of the next few years, especially when when Pluto goes into Aquarius. Look out, because they're going to have a Pluto opposition, and I think that could be very, very dramatic for that country, to be honest with you. I'd be very surprised if Israel, as we know it, survives through that Pluto opposition. And if they do, who knows? Maybe it'll be a global land grab. I don't know. But they've got some challenging real estate ahead of them. Let's put it that way. So something's going on here with this in conjunct. Okay, the other thing that really grabbed my eye is like, look what's going on right here. Like their sun, the Israeli sun, is right on the midheaven of this event. It's like a calling card almost. You know, this is the sun is at the highest point in the chart. It is at apex in this chart. So whether or not they are actually behind or involved in this, clearly they are positioned to take advantage of this event. Because look at what's happening now. Their sun is in trine with Saturn, Pluto. Their sun is in trine with Mars, Sun, transiting Mars, Sun. That's pulling a lot of energy. So they are at the top of the pyramid here. They're at apex as a result of this event. Now, maybe they were somehow related to this event and they will benefit from it, but clearly there's going to be benefit, some level of benefit to Israel with this trine, with the trine to Saturn, Pluto, trine to Sun, Mercury. But here's what's really interesting. Look at where Mars is. Transiting Mars is right on the ascendant. And when I saw that, I said, you know, that's a smoking gun. That is a smoking gun. It's either going to give them the pretext to attack, or the attack itself was somehow motivated by this aspect, by these aspects, and by these transits. I don't think it's too far of a stretch, because there are people that have vested interest in that part of the world, vested interest in Iran, and Benjamin Netanyahu, right now, he needs a war. That's the other thing. He is not. I don't understand these other political systems. Like, he just went through an election when was it? In December. He was up against this guy named Gates. And he went up. It was like there was this election, and he won. But now he's got another election, which is what, 6 months later. How does that work? I'm not too enlightened about that process. But apparently, he's not doing really well. And of course, there's a lot of these small little missile attacks that are going on, and that he was at some event, and he was campaigning, and the sirens went off. It was kind of this, gala sort of thing, and the sirens went off, and all of a sudden, all these dudes went onto the stage and moved him off the stage and got him out of harm's way. And that video has not done a lot for that guy's character, because what he could have done, theoretically, first, nothing happened. But they had to make a big fucking show of it. What he could have done is he could have said, oh, it looks like we're having a missile raid. Listen, we all need to be calm. Just relax. We have really good people here. Let's listen to this. Let's let it remind us of what happens on a daily basis. Whatever he wanted to throw out there. But instead, he runs away. It was not a good look, okay? So this guy's numbers and his public persona is starting to... So he could really use a war. He could use a war. That'd be the best thing. He thinks so, but I think it could be disastrous, to be honest with you. And then we have over here the square, Moon, Pluto, Saturn. Like, Israel's moon is at 4 degrees, and it's squaring Uranus, which to me is indicative of a high degree of restlessness. Like, this is a country that is really restless and wants something to happen, wants to make something happen. Also, since the moon represents the home, right, they're also getting into this annexation of Gaza and basically turning, that whole thing into even more of an open air prison than it already is. And so we have the Moon Uranus square, which is the radicalization or the radical reorientation of the home or the homeland. This is what's going on in their chart. And they're going to have a Uranus square Pluto, and they're going to have a Uranus square Saturn. What's their Pluto at? Their Pluto's at 16 Leo. Oh, just wait till Saturn goes into Aquarius, and we have a big fat T square going on in fixed signs. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. This is a country that needs to be, I think, very, very careful, to be honest with you. Very, very careful. But I also feel like they're ready to jump in. With Mars here in the ascendant, they're ready to use this as a pretext for war. Possibly even with Mars on the ascendant being somehow involved in the transgression, or at the very least willing to capitalize on it. It's a very interesting chart. Let's see, we have Neptune squaring Saturn, squaring Pluto. So their natal Neptune is at 10, so it's in a wide square with Saturn right now. It's been in the square. So that's interesting. I mean, it's like if you're an Israeli, you really can't trust your government. That's what that boils down to, because things are coming up. And I know that there are Israelis that are invested in some level of peace or some level of, I don't know, greater harmony, treating people better. I'm not here to lump in a bunch of people, but there is a government in place, or people that are running that government. They have deep ties to the military-industrial complex in this country. They have deep ties to intelligence agencies. Just recently, last week, they found out that, guess what? They found spying equipment around the White House, and it was Israel. It was Israel. And so what does Trump say? Oh, no, they wouldn't do that. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, they would never do that. Well, maybe he has to say that. But that man is, if he believes that, he's in denial. Everybody, you know, maybe he's just, you know, playing poker like he's doing with everybody else. But again, you know, they're kind of in the news and not in a good way. So this is interesting. I feel like there are calling cards here. We've got the all, you know, the square moon Venus square to Uranus, explosive, fast. Let's bypass diplomacy or whatever. Let's just get to it. But to me, sort of the calling card around all this is the sun at apex, close to the midheaven, Mars on the ascendant, and then these three guys in the 12th house, hidden, deeply embedded in the 12th house. So again, this is the story is going to be written over the course of the next few days. You know, I'm not here to promote any fear or panic, but it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal what happened, and they want to blame Iran for it, and that's really not the case, because, you know, even if it was the Houthis, you know, it wasn't Iran, and they could say that the Houthis are working for the Iranians, and I don't know, you know, Saudi Arabia has been at war with Yemen and the Houthis, and they're getting their ass kicked, and maybe it's a way for them to reframe. I mean, look, this is geopolitical quagmire, pin the tail on the victim politics. That's what it is, and we're going to see just a bunch of shit over the course of the next few days. You may want to fill up your tanks, though. You just may want to. Just you may want to catch some of that cheap old gas for a while. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying we're going to run out of gas, but you may want to just capitalize on it. Saudi Arabia's got an investment in this thing. They need to pump, so they're going to try to get their thing up and running as quickly as possible. But also, they'll make more money if oil goes to $100 a barrel. That's for damn sure. That's for damn sure. And then we got the moon in Aries, right, scoring Pluto tomorrow. This is when all the press is going to hit. This is when all the rhetoric is going to get spoken. And it's interesting that John Bolton's out of the picture. The guy that apparently is taking over for Bolton is just as much of a war hawk neocon as he is. All right, let's get back to you guys and what's happening in your world. In Chatlandia. So we have the prices go straight up. I hear there are a ton of UAPs at ESETI. It's all about the 12 tribes, unidentified. Poor Iranians have been kicked around for decades. Yeah, man, I like the Iranians. Persians are good people. I wish Trump would kick Kushner out. Trump's kids are in trouble this December. Yeah, I mean, I think you know, Saturn's going through Saturn, and that big eclipse, that massive eclipse, is going to be happening in Trump's 5th house and his 11th house, right? It says his 5th house, so that's why his kids are going to be in trouble. 5th house is children. Jared and Ivanka are kind of running the show, aren't they? It feels that way at times. All right, let me fire up another chart. So where is the United States with all this? I pulled up a bunch of charts for the United States today. Yeah, I think they're kind of interesting. So this is the chart for the United States in the drone strike. This is where we are with this whole thing. All right, so the United States is on the outside, right? United States is actually United States is on the inside. This is the U.S. chart, and so the drone strike is here on the outside. And what's really interesting is that the United States has Neptune on the midheaven, and Neptune on the midheaven, it's a really interesting place for Neptune, and it's one of the most misunderstood positions for Neptune. You know, I did a small piece on Neptune on the midheaven and people that have Pisces midheaven, and by and large, you know, it's a really interesting aspect. It denotes mysticism, it denotes some form of religion. It denotes creativity, artistry, drug use as well. Sometimes distortion, that the person or the entity who has Neptune on the midheaven sees themselves in a certain way. The world sees them back in a certain way, but they don't connect. Kind of like Don Quixote tilting at windmills, that sort of a thing. But it also is petroleum and drugs and liquor and all those fluids. So the United States has Neptune and Virgo on the midheaven, and it is a country, obviously, that is ruled by a lot of the things that I've talked about. And even on the spiritual side, the United States is I'll get into a very interesting kind of tidbit with that tonight as a birthday chart that I'm going to look at and share with you guys, where it's a place where this idea that you could become a spiritual teacher or a spiritual guru or somebody who's charismatic or cult leader, it's been a part of this country for a very long time. And even from the fact that the Freemasons helped set the country up with Neptune on the midheaven would speak to that, since the Freemasons, by and large, are a mystical order. And I do believe that the Freemasonry that existed roughly prior to 1776 is a bit different than the Freemasonry that exists now, since Adam Weishaupt theoretically went into the lodges and changed the lodges. So I think that there was a different brand, and a lot of the founding fathers were Freemasons, but I think they were pre-Illuminati or pre-illuminated Freemasons. Although I think those concepts were still a part of their order. Clearly, when Weishaupt came in and infiltrated, things changed, and they changed radically. There was a different kind of, I think, mission and intention. So we can see this with Neptune on the midheaven. I mean, just look at it. We have this is where Calvinism took root. We had the what was it, the second and third Great Awakening taking place here in this country. This is where where's the third Great Awakening, right? This is where Mormonism and John Smith and L. Ron Hubbard, and now we have the rise of Satanism and Illuminism. And it's all that Neptune on the midheaven. It's all there. So we also see that that the Sun and Mars are right on that Neptune. That's a really interesting aspect to me. And to me, it's almost like, okay, well, we're going to use Sun-Mars, potentially use Sun-Mars to go to war. And it's with this Neptune opposition, because that's going on. Like the U.S. Neptune is at, where is it, 22 Virgo, and this Neptune's at 17 Pisces. And those oppositions are going to get tighter and tighter. So this country is going to go through Neptune opposition. It's going to be very intense. Very, very, very intense. So that's going to happen before 2025 when Neptune goes into Aries. So the Neptune opposition is going to be in about 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years. Wow. That's going to be intense. I mean, to me, if you look at, we're transiting Neptune, it's getting very close to the USIC, which is getting into like the home and what home represents. And Neptune to me, and the IC in the fourth house, has the potential for homelessness, big homelessness. It's indigence, and it's also sort of this this loosening of of this idea of the family in a lot of ways. I think there's going to be a big crisis with this Neptune opposition in the U.S. chart. But right now, we got Sun-Mars on top of Neptune. Are we going to go to war? Is the Sun-Mars conjunction, which happened in Saudi Arabia, right, at 4 a.m., right on top of the U.S. Neptune, is this going to be the call to war? Or will Neptunian sort of cooler heads prevail? There's a lot of illusion in this chart. There's a lot of illusion. There's tons of squares coming off of both Neptunes, transiting Neptune, and of course with the natal planets, in Mars. And this is the addiction problem. You know, the United States has Mars and Gemini at 21 and Neptune at 22. That's an addiction problem. That's the addiction. That's a heavy duty addiction problem. And when you look at that in a natal chart, people with Mars Neptune squares have some form of addiction. I've seen it again and again and again. It could be food, it could be video. I've talked about this ad infinitum. It's in the US chart. And what do we have? We've got an addiction problem, big time. So this is going to be very interesting how this all plays out. Yep, and then we get the true node coming in and hitting the United States sun. That's going to be a very interesting time, right? So the United States sun is at 13 degrees Cancer, and right now that transiting true node is right at 15. So sometime this week, that transiting true node is going to be right on the U.S. sun. You know, is it going to be a we're mad as hell, we're not going to take it anymore kind of moment? Is it the you're either with us or against us kind of moment? I mean, it is definitely going to be tapping in here. And then Saturn has been in opposition with the U.S. sun for this past year. Interesting, huh? We've already gone through the Pluto opposition. We've somehow managed to make it through that. Maybe the world really ended, and we're just, you know, kind of living in some kind of other model, and we didn't really make it through it. But we do have the Saturn-Sun opposition, and that's a very interesting one. And it's just coming down to this, you know, this, because there are people who, even if they're on the left, they see themselves as being champions of rights, and they see themselves as being champions of those who are, you know, disenfranchised and less well off as they are. And I can see where, you know, that could get sort of defined by that Saturn Sun opposition. But there's also a bunch of people who are pushing back and saying, you know, we've kind of had enough of this. You know, we've had enough of you telling us what to do. You know, it's really interesting. Right after that thing happened in El Paso, the shooting in El Paso, the very next day, Texas made their gun laws more liberal, meaning that they said, screw you, we're going to make a bunch of stuff legal now that wasn't legal before. One day after, it was kind of amazing how that worked. It was just kind of a big middle finger in some ways. Sometimes I really like Texas. Other times it's a little heavy. But that was really interesting. I'm a little concerned about this chart, to be quite honest with you. I'm concerned about the Sun-Mars conjunction right on top of Neptune and the Neptune opposition. But remember, things aren't always as they seem. Just remember that. And there may be things that are going to happen over the course of the next few days and weeks that will be as ephemeral as mirages that will surface from time to time in the deserts and the sands of the very Middle East that we're talking about. So be sure not to grab onto something and say, this is it, this is truth, this is real, this is what's going to take place, because with all this mutability, that's not really the case. But at the same time, because of all that mutability, there are things that could happen as well, and it's important to pay attention to those things. I am a little bit concerned because of the position of Sun-Mars with that event at that time, right on top of the U.S. Neptune. Okay, let me go to another chart. This is a chart that's interesting. This is a guy that I always found to be a very unique character. Let's put it that way. Very unique. Before I go in there, let me just check in with you guys in the chat room. I'm about ready to segue into another little segment here. Let's see what else we have here. I saw Larry tweets recently. Interesting, Rob. Let's see. It's very possible, Robert. This time it was crazy. I think there'll be a response to the oil tax. Yeah, you know, unfortunately, I think you're right. Especially with You know, that sun Mars conjunction right on top of the U.S. Neptune on the midheaven. You know, it's almost a fait accompli. Let's see. What else we have here? Let's look at Larry Johnson's chart. Larry Johnson, the running back of the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, so Larry Johnson, if you want to know about Larry Johnson, he used to be a running back for Kansas City Chiefs. Larry Johnson, for a long time, was rumored to be Jay-Z's squeeze boy. Okay, so Larry Johnson knows a little bit about what he's talking about. Larry Johnson's been on the inside game. Like, look at his chart. I want to look at this other chart. Let's see. I'd have to fire up Larry Johnson's chart. Okay, there's this guy by the name of Korla Pandit. And Korla Pandit was a really, really interesting character. And he was I'll put up a picture of him. He was a really interesting character in the early days of television. And I've done this chart before, and some of you are kind of new to the channel, so you haven't really probably heard, you know, my my rap on Korla Pandit. He's an interesting character. So let me grab his image here, and you guys can have a peek at him. Okay, this is a great picture. I love this picture. So in the early days of television, whenever they would have a commercial, they didn't have commercials. They didn't have commercials back then. They did not have commercials that many in the early days of television. So they would have to fill time, and a lot of early television was live. So they'd have to fill time between shows. So in many cases, they would have musical performers. I'll do Cam Newton's chart, Rob. We'll do Cam Newton. If you're into a football chart, I'll do Cam Newton. Anyway, they would have these performers do things live on national television. And, you know, there was like people playing with snakes and shit like that. So here's this guy. His name is Korla Pandit. And he played the organ. Okay, he played the organ. And look at him. I mean, this guy, you know, he had mesmerizing eyes. I'm going to play a video. I've got a Korla Pandit video queued up and ready to go. And I'm going to talk about, I'll talk about Mr. Pandit. He's one of these guys that fits into that Neptune on the midheaven of the United States, because he went on after his career in television, which took a really weird turn. He decided that he was going to become a guru and an Indian master. And he was going to talk about basically the sacred science of music and sound. And I remember the first time I saw this guy, it was on, you know, kind of a cinescope or something like that. And I was mesmerized, like, wow, this guy's got something going on. He's got these incredible eyes, and he's got a real presence about him. So I was always fascinated by Korla Pandit. Many years later, when I was in my 20s, I was at a Mexican restaurant in Calistoga, small little Mexican restaurant. And I'm sitting there and I'm eating my food, and all of a sudden I look to my left, and there's this old dude in a turban playing an organ, small organ, inside the restaurant. And if it wasn't Korla Pandit, I'm like, there's Korla Pandit. He's playing at this restaurant in Calistoga. And I looked at him, and he knew that I knew who he was. You know, you ever have that moment where you know somebody's famous, and then they know that you know that they're famous or semi-famous? It was that moment. Anyway, Korla Pandit, super interesting character, and he was this early pioneer of television. Let me play you. Today's his birthday. Let me play you his video so you can get an idea of what he looks like and what he kind of looked like when he was actually doing the video, so when he was performing for people. I'm not going to play the music because I might get hit with a copyright thing, but you'll get to see kind of Pandit in action here. It's really interesting. And the track is Miserlou, which was a kind of a big. It was a big. Give me 1 second. Let me do a screen share. It was a big hit during that time. Like Les Paul and all these other people, they did it. Okay, so here he is. This is Corla. Let's do full screen on him. There he is. So this is from the 1950s. Right, so just think about this now. There are the eyes, right? It's super cool. He's got the long fingers, you know, and he's just making this organ sing. And this is in between shows. This is what you would see during the 1950s, right? So they're definitely showing. There he is now. Look at that face, right? It's a beautiful face. He looks like he looks like you know, Krishnamurti's little brother or something, doesn't he? So we got a standard 2-camera shot. Got a camera that's basically right behind. Look at that. He's jamming on the palm. He's killing it right there. He's totally killing it. This guy's talented. And he mesmerized people. And he was in line for a very, very big contract. And there's some very interesting twists and turns to this story. Now look at this. He's going to go all Rick Wakeman here. He's going to go jam over here on the piano. So this guy's like Rick Wakeman before he's Rick Wakeman. He's getting all Sun Ra here. So if you remember, this is 1950s, and you've just watched I don't know, GE theater, right? And this guy comes on. He's got the big kind of golden statue of Buddha behind him. This is transporting. This is totally transcendental. And he was so popular that he was regional, by the way. This was in mostly California, West Coast, and he would have a few spots nationally, but they were looking for somebody to plug in at a national level. So he was about to hit the big time. Corla was about to hit the big time. But there's another side to Corla Pandit, which I'm going to share with you. And it's totally fascinating. Remember, this gets into that Neptune conjunction of the midheaven, because we like mystics. We like mystics. We like people like Corla Pandit. We like John Edward. You know, we like channeling. This is part of the fabric of this country. With Neptune on the midheaven, it is a mystical country. It is a country that's steeped in sort of this mystic tableau. And for all intents and purposes, Corla Pandit tapped into it. All right, here come the eyes. There he is, right? Mr. Dreamy Eyes, Mr. Shy Eyes. He's got the third eye thing going on there. Well, he's jamming now. He's hitting the palms. This dude is talented, right? Okay. So let's get to the story of Corla Pandit, which I've shared before. We'll bring this back up again. And to me, this is just such an American story on so many levels. So Corla Pandit is not even his real name. It's not even his real name. His real name is John Roland Redd, and he was born in 1921 in St. Louis, Missouri. He's not Indian. He's not Indian. He was supposedly the product of somebody who was from India and somebody who was from some France, right? He was the son of a French opera singer and a Brahmin government official. That was his story. And he was not. Let me read you from Wikipedia. John Roland Redd was born in St. Louis, Missouri as one of 7 children. His father, Ernest Redd, was an African-American Baptist pastor. Redd's mother, Doshia Onina Johnson, had French and African ancestry. Both parents were descended from African-American slaves. Redd and his siblings were all light-skinned with straight, glossy hair and an ethnically ambiguous appearance. Very interesting, right? So he did have some of the French thing going on. His paternal grandfather was Henri Janson, who was born in Lyon, France, and immigrated to the United States and married Marie Leclerc. She was a Louisiana Creole gal. So he was raised in Hannibal, Missouri. Then they moved to Columbia, and his father was the Baptist. He was a pastor of the second largest Baptist church in town. So they attended segregated schools. And a contemporary of Red's, the jazz pianist called Sir Charles Thompson, knew Red from Columbia. They attended high school together. So they played together. And eventually, he winds up marrying this woman. Okay. So by the 1940s, he moves to Los Angeles for more opportunity. His older sisters, Ruth and Frances, had already moved there. Of course, Los Angeles was the place where you could remake yourself. California was that place of the dream. Red used the name Juan Rolando. So for a while, he was actually passing as Mexican. To gain a job playing the organ on the Los Angeles radio station, KMPC. Passing as a Mexican allowed him to join the Musicians Union, which was not open to African Americans. So by being a Mexican, he could be in the union. This guy is slippery, man. Let's see. He opened up that opened up additional opportunities for studio and club work. He performed under the name Rolando in various lounges. He was on the Rudy Valley Show, a Jubilee radio program. So he was pretty talented. In the 1940s, Red met his sister Frances's white friend and roommate. This is where it gets interesting. Beryl June DeBeeson. She was a Disney artist. So he meets this woman who works for Disney, and she was a former dancer. They fell in love, and they got married in Tijuana because at that time you couldn't get married if you were biracial in California. The couple had two sons, Shari and Karam. Red and his wife created a new entertainment persona for Red's use. Most Americans did not know much about people from India, and they thought Red could have some exotic appeal by passing as an Indian. Beryl designed the makeup and clothing Red used, and Red took the name Korla Pandit. He developed an elaborate history and continued to add it during his career. He stated that he had been born in New Delhi, India, to a French opera singer and an Indian Brahmin government official. Supposedly raised in an upper-class Indian household, Red claimed to have studied music in England as a child, arrived in the U.S. at the age of 12, and studied at the University of Chicago. Red used the Korla Pandit persona for the rest of his life. In 1948, Red created and played background music as Korla Pandit for the revival of radio's occult adventure series, Shandu the Magician, achieving atmospheric effects on the Nova Chord and the Hammond CV. In 1949, he performed on Hollywood Holiday broadcasts from a Los Angeles restaurant. In 1948, while performing as Korla Pandit at Hollywood at a Furrier's fashion show in Tom Brenneman's restaurant, Red and his wife Beryl met television pioneer Klaus Landsberg. He offered Red a daily 15-minute show with the stipulation that the musician would also provide accompaniment for Time for Beanie, Bob Clampett's popular puppet show. Bob Clampett did Beanie and Cecil, right? Korla Pandit's Adventures in Music was first telecast in L.A. at the KTLA radio station in February 1949. So here's what happens with him. He winds up, this is interesting too. He was buddies with Errol Flynn and Bob Hope. Okay. Errol Flynn and Bob Hope were notorious. Bob Hope was a big-time handler. Errol Flynn was a spy, buddies with L. Ron Hubbard, Korla Pandit's pal. Ooh, interesting, huh? Very interesting. Mm-hmm. Known for his roles in the documentary The Elephant Boy and the feature The Thief of Baghdad. That was Sabu Dastigar. That was an actor. Okay. So what happened is that he was supposed to get a really big contract, and he held out. His wife held him out, and he was going to go national. He wasn't just going to be in LA and sometimes beamed out nationally, but his wife held him out, and the guy that took his place was Liberace.
So Liberace became that guy on TV playing the piano. In 1965, Red moved to San Francisco and performed as Corla Pandit on San Francisco's KGO TV. He began speaking on a show espousing a spiritual blend of ideas that entranced many of his fans. So this guy's really playing this thing. Nobody knows he's this guy from St. Louis. After returning to Los Angeles, he became friends with Paramahansa Yogananda. So he's palling around with Yogananda, who was down at the Self-Realization Institute in San Diego and Encinitas. The leader wrote an introduction to liner notes for one of Red's records. So Paramahansa Yogananda was writing liner notes for him. This was a time of seeking for many Americans, with Alan Watts and Aldous Huxley becoming more prominent intellectuals in California. Red read widely and incorporated a variety of thought in his talks. In 1967, Red and his family moved to Vancouver, British Columbia to prevent his sons from being drafted in the Vietnam War. So he died in Petaluma of a myocardial infarction. 2 years after his death, R.J. Smith, magazine editor of the Los Angeles, published an article revealing his true identity. So this guy was Corla Pandit all of his life. All his life. Nobody except maybe his closest people ever found out or figured it out. Red's sons had heard rumors about their father's ethnicity as they grew older, but were not told of their father's African-American ethnicity until after his death. Shari died before the publication of Smith's 2001 article, and John rejected Smith's findings. Like the son says, screw you. That's not true. He's Corla Pandit. Think about that. Intrigued by the Smith article, John Turner and Eric Christensen, retired TV producers who had each known Red in his later years, made a documentary entitled Corla. The duo wrote and produced the film together. Turner directed it. The duo interviewed an array of friends, fellow musicians, and family, discussing Red's life and achievements, and explained the complexities of racial identity. The year Corla was widely released, various media outlets commented on Red's history, which they cast as a classic American story of self-invention. Absolutely. Absolutely. You see, that's where Neptune on the midheaven in the United States chart takes hold. You can become anybody. Theoretically, you can become anybody. It's really mystery achievement. I mean, think about that. Is Corla Pandit that much different than, say, Barack Obama or even Bill Clinton? We use Barack Obama because Barack Obama is not his name. His real name is Barry Soetoro. But we took on the name Barack Obama. And how much do we really know about Barack Obama and his creation? And we know bits and pieces, threads, shards, but he's as much of a self-created entity as Corla Pandit is. And this will always be part of the American story, with the exception of maybe the upcoming Neptune opposition, in which case that may be a time when people who purport to be somebody other than they are may have a more difficult time when that occurs. There could be a time when the masks are pulled away and that people are seen for who they really are, not who they purport themselves to be. But in the case of this man's life, the fiction was far better than the so-called reality that he might have been able to create himself. As Corla Pandit, he became part of the pantheon and sort of this tapestry of American culture. And who knows, maybe he influenced people's lives in a way that were positive, gave them a sense of hope, gave them some spiritual mana to chew on for a while. So in this case, is the fiction all that bad? Was the deception all that dastardly? It's an interesting story. It's an interesting question. It's an interesting thought. And did he harm anybody? Did Corla Pandit harm anybody in the process of this? Never read anything. I mean, who knows? Early on, maybe hanging out with Bob Hope and Errol Flynn. Who knows about that shit, right? But nothing ever came out about him treating people, poorly or weird, or, And in fact, a little wrinkle here, I actually wound up getting to know the daughter of the family that owned that restaurant many years later. Kind of a weird, twisty thing in some ways, but interesting. It's an interesting question. The process of self-creation with Neptune on the midheaven. I mean, look at somebody like Werner Erhard. What's his real name? Jack Rosenberg, right? Becomes Werner Erhard. Goes to Mexico, leaves his family, goes to Mexico, and he invents Est. There's all kinds of stories about tales where people do this. Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson isn't even her real name. Marianne Williamson is this, liberal, lefty, Jewish gal from Houston who discovers, the Course in Miracles. She discovers the Course in Miracles, and she becomes this. She goes to California. She does the same thing, right? I mean, it's part of the story. It's part of the tale of the United States. It is part of the mystical and spiritual thread, where there's people that inspire us. It's filled with teachers and charlatans, fakes, fools, and profound teachers and sages. It's a fascinating place. And you're not going to get that in any other country, not with Neptune on that midheaven. Like that story, that doesn't happen in Germany, right? It doesn't happen in England. It happens here in the United States. Fascinating stuff. Anyway, Corla, John, wherever you are, I hope you are jamming the celestial keys and really understanding the transcendental nature of the tonal existence of creation. All right, let me check in with you guys, see where you're at. Pandy was good entertainment as a faux identity. Obama had no allegiance to the USA, became president. Yeah, it's a bit different. I get it. I totally get it. Right, I get it. But it's part of the story. It's part of the same story. Let's see what else we have. Miriam, some surprise Democrats. Yeah, that was great, wasn't it? She was like, bang, bang. Late but always on time. Hi, Janelle. Nice to see you. Look at Madonna. She was speaking the Queen's tongue after only 3 weeks in England. Madonna, right? What's her name? Donna Ciccone. Yeah, that's what happened. I mean, look, even with actors. Look at actors and their names. Like Tony Curtis wasn't his last name Lipschitz or something like that? I mean, this is part of the American story. Part of the American story. It's a very interesting one, and it's a slippery slope at times too. There's a lot of people get fooled by the guru trip. Really get fooled by the guru trip. Lots of interesting documentaries about that. Watch The Family. Watch Source Family. That's totally fascinating. Okay, I think I'm going to get out of here. I want to do Cam Newton's chart. It's getting a little late. About 2 hours. We did this for about 2 hours now, right? Okay. Maybe I'll do his chart next week. Depends. Depends on his post-game outfit. We'll see. We'll see what Cam Newton has. Poor guy. Get off the vegan, Cam. You're going to get killed on that field. If you're a vegan playing football, you get killed. Sorry. It's not your sport. Either eat meat or don't compete. Go be a runway model somewhere. You can find me over at robertphoenix.com. Good place to go. Starting a new website if you want to book a reading with me, robertphoenix.com. If you want to send Jasper a fan letter, you can send that to I think Jasper has an email address. I'll have his email address on Tuesday. If you want to send him a fan letter, I'll put out Jasper's email address. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you hanging out and being here. It's going to be an interesting week. It could get hot. Just remember that. We're starting off with the Leo moon. It could get real hot. So keep your cool to the best of your ability. Don't get caught up in the Moon-Pluto square. You get the Moon-Jupiter trine. Be magnanimous. Take deep breaths. Stay positive. Find your faith. It's really essential and critical. Stay healthy. Take care of your body. Take care of your mind. Take care of your spirit. Take care of the people, the little four-leggeds that are really important players in our lives. These animals they're essential. They're essential for our livelihood and our mental health and our spiritual health. They're great. They're just totally great. All right. I think I'm going to be putting together kind of a Patreon thing. I think that's going to be the next level. So, keep your eyes on it. It'll allow me to do some different content, and I think it would be kind of cool. And there could be some really interesting benefits also for becoming a Patreon. So I'll be working on that. In the meantime, use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. It's always great spending my Sunday night with you. And Jasper and his furry butt also say good night.